Hello and welcome to another video for Uncle Cthulhu Reviews. So this is going to be showing off more of the Warlord Games miniatures, the Epic Battle Civil War stuff, showing off a bit of my Kallistra stuff, but actually the meat of this video is me going to be talking about different rule sets and what I've done to be able to play different rule sets for the American Civil War. If you're interested in Black Powder, then I will be doing a series of videos on Black Powder, and if you're interested, if you just come into Black Powder and start Black Powder, I'll be doing a series of videos on how to play Black Powder. But as you see in my other videos, I do a lot of wargaming and I've used a lot of different rules, and there's a few things to consider, but basically you can use these miniatures for a load of different rule sets. So I'm going to be talking about Principles of War, Civil War Battles by Picketts Charge, Fire and Fury, and Rebels and Patriots as well. And as you can see here, what I've done in front of us, dark Union blue, is I have started, so for those of you that don't know, I have a Union Kallistra army and a Pendraken Confederate army. The Pendraken models are a wee bit small compared to the Warlord Games Epic Battle ones, which is a pity because the Pendraken range is a lovely range. What I've decided to do is go whole hog and rebase my Union troops so they can fit the Epic Battle models. So I'll show some of those off. Some Zouaves, the Iron Brigade, some regular troops and firing line. And again, I think this shows off quite nicely. You know, with the Warlord Games, you're getting a very dense formation and a bit of a smaller formation with the Kallistra ones. It'd be quite difficult to chuck 20 figures onto the Kallistra bases, but as you see, the Warlord ones are standing shoulder to shoulder. And the Kallistra figures are slightly smaller than the Warlord ones, but on the table, on the battlefield, I don't think it makes too much difference. And where there's some Zouaves. So far I have about 10 regiments of Union stuff rebased, and my cavalry and artillery as well. Okay, so let's start talking about some rules. So the first set of rules we're going to talk about, if you can see, Principles of War. So for the Civil War, you need to get the supplement with the army lists in for the sort of colonial wars and American wars as well. The Principles of War I've used lots in the past. I've used a Napoleonic set, and we've basically redid all the battles from the peninsula. And the units in Principles of War are based in 3 stands. They suggest 30 by 20. Can't see too much difference between that and using a slightly wider stand. So I'm going to move out of the way. Your 3 main formations is column, firing line, and a dense, what they call a sort of a dense formation. What I really like about Principles of War is at the start of the battle, if you're not fighting a scenario, you actually start off with sort of unit cards, brigade cards that you put down, so your opponent doesn't see what they are. You also get some blank ones to represent fog of war, and I really like that. It adds some, how would you say it, adds some importance to scouting. You've also got set army lists or create scenarios. With the army lists, to give you an idea, the Confederate army, if we take 1863 to 1864 army lists, Confederate would need 12 regiments, 3 artilleries and a cavalry unit, and the Union has 17 regiments and 4 artillery. You do record losses off table, and your unit's there until it's gone. There's no taking off individual bases. It's got quite an interesting turn sequence, which starts off with morale, fire, hand-to-hand and move, and that represents your units that's moving up to engage the enemy are going to have a round of combat where the enemy can react to them first. which I thought was pretty cool. The other thing you've got, since you're recording combat loss off the table, is you can use fixed or variable strength. So for example, fixed strength, every unit might be worth, say, 12 strength points. Variable strength, it might be 8 plus d6. And you'd roll for that the first time you fire or take damage. So I will be doing some stuff with Principles of War. I'm actually working through an Anglo-Zulu War project at the moment, and I'm going to be doing a series of videos on that as well, and I've used Principles of War to represent the forces in that. Okay, so the next set of rules I want to talk about, again, I've had a lot of experience with these, is Civil War Battles by Peter Pig. There we go. It actually tells you that it is a complete battle system, and it is a complete battle system. I've done a review of this before, and it's the scenario generator, I think, is a real star of this set of rules. Now, normally with Civil War battles, it's individual bases, and you'll lose stands. So you're looking at about 6 individual bases. So my plans are to count each one of the Warlord bases. See, now I have put brown texture on the bases and haven't highlighted it up. I'm looking at it through the camera and it looks pretty dark, so I'm going to use these guys so we can see a bit better. So anyway, so I'm going to use each base as 2 stands, and my starting units I will work out will be either 4 or 6 stands big. Okay, so that would represent either 2 stands or 6 stands. Now you will need individual stands as you take casualties. Now each stand has basically 2 hit points. As you can see here, I've created, for each one of my units, I'm creating a smaller base as well. I've just got some 30 by 20 bases. So in this instance, this unit, standing, firing in line. What I would do with these fellas as I start taking damage is first hit, turn it round, second hit, that's that stand gone, third hit, fourth hit. The rules actually talk about making half-size bases and stuff, but that turning around of stands to represent the casualty taken on the stand is something that works quite well. You see they've actually put if you can see, if it focuses, casualty figures on the bases. Other thing I do commonly in rules, some rules talk about using markers for disorder and stuff. If a unit is disordered, I'll turn around the command base so you can see it's disordered. One thing to think about with Peter Pig rules is you take away the unit's frontage from 6, and that gives you how many bounds of movement it can make. So in this instance, the unit frontage would count as 2. So 2 minus 2 from 6 is 4. They'd be able to move 4 times. So with this formation, you're not going to be able to make 1 stand columns. Not so much of a problem. I've never really used them in games. Most of the time I'm getting up like this and then I'm starting to push forward my columns, and most of my units do end up with, say, 4 stands in the front. That would enable me to move twice if I needed to, with the most firepower coming in. If you have made loads of single bases, then you could use with odd bases as well. But I like the formation and I like the tightness of the Warlord bases. Okay, like it says before, it's a really innovative way to set up a battle. I really like the scenario creation for that. Check out my other video. The books itself comes with a ton of army lists. So it's got East and West, Confederate and Union, each year of the war. It also includes a British and a French intervention force. 600 points is quite a large game. Does that give you a good battle in an evening? And I reckon you're looking at about 9 to 10 regiments plus some guns. And of course you can make scenarios as well. Now cracking on to Picketts Charge. I'm going to just put some more models in the front there to keep things interesting. Now I will admit, Picketts Charge is a set of rules I've not had a chance to play. Lots of reviews and lots of it getting played. What I really like about Picketts Charge is a quite simple looking way to do command and control. So your divisional commander will roll each turn for how many ADCs they get, and then they send ADCs out to help brigade commanders either activate or special commands. Each turn you need to roll a test to see if your brigade commander activates. If they do, happy days. If they don't, if you've got an ADC to help them, you'd get a re-roll. But like I say, the other thing ADCs can do, I believe, is stuff like get bonuses for charging or firing guns. Now, whilst the Picketts Charge rules do talk about individual bases, and that helps you work out strengths and formations. I think each individual base might represent about 70 men, if I remember correctly. What actually matters in game terms is whether your unit is small, regular, or large. So small units is up to 4 stands, up to 6 stands is regular, and more than that will be large. So like we said before with black powder, if we're counting 4 bases there as a small unit, 3 is a regular, and maybe add a 4th in for a large as well. Just like we would do with black powder, and then we'd be able to start playing the rules. Formation wise, you're looking at line or double line. So line, as expected, double line, something like that. You've also got an attack column stacked. You do have a column of single base width, which you can't make, but in the rules it talks about this only being in exceptional circumstances. And when you're firing a unit, you're rolling 2d6 for the unit. You don't need to worry about individual stands either, so your formation won't matter for that. It's quite cool. It's roll 2d6. You might get some extra dice, which is called casualty dice. Apply modifiers, and the result's the number of hits. And you count up the number of hits on the unit until the unit is wiped out. And actually, that's another way you can use the wee half stands. So in this set of rules, we're not using half stands, but as a unit starts taking hits, you might put a half stand with it to show it start taking hits, and put a dice next to it. You could even just have a stamina counter. Let's see if I've got any handy. No, they're in the... Oh, yes. You could even mount a casualty figure with space for a dice. I've got some small dice. Certainly I use this in black powder so I can count up my stamina and see at a glance what's happening to units on the battlefield. Okay. So yeah, I think this basing convention will fit very well with Picketts Charge. And it's a game I really do want to get on the tabletop. I say I like the command and control system of it. So, coming back now to Fire and Fury. So one of the granddaddies of American Civil War rules. In my opinion, one of the more interesting innovations in wargaming. I played this. This is Regimental Fire and Fury I've got in front of us. I played this loads in the 90s with brigade level. So you basically brigades and divisions rather than this one, which is regiments and brigades. And what I remember from it was back at the time, a lot of war games had rule systems where you could just basically be God and your units just moved. What Fire and Fury did was either you'd state what you wanted your regiment to do and then roll on a table to see what happened. It also included loads of flavoursome terms like skedaddle, etc. And that was really groundbreaking for me at the time, and I fell in love with the set of rules. And when I did 15mm Civil War back in the 90s, it was these or Johnny Rebber used. So it's individually based units, but the units are quite large. Normally units are between 8 to 12 units. So again, I would just count these as 2 and start racking them up. So 8 and obviously up to 6 for 12 base unit. Because you're using individual casualties as a come off, this is where your wee half bases come in. So when he loses a stand, it goes down to 7. There you go. Again, you're basically looking at March. Now March, you're going to be difficult to make because you'd have single columns, but I'd count that with that. If you wanted to really represent a single column in March, maybe turn around the command stand like that to represent the March. Or maybe turn it round like that, and then you're going to get the depth of the marching column, I suppose. And then you've got your field column, which is 2 by 2, or obviously 2, and then the depth. You've got your line, which is fairly obvious, and then you do have a formation, which is an extended line. So yeah, really easy to represent. And finally, my last set of rules to talk about is one I hadn't thought about using, which is Rebels and Patriots. Little War TV does a really good Islam-Duwana battle, and they use the Many Would Be King, which are a similar sort of set of rules, and they're primarily written to be a skirmish set of rules. Now, what you can do, and this is a bit of a wild card, is the units are 12 men each. So rather than use 12 men, what you might do is use the equivalent of 12 bases, count these as 2 bases each. You might even represent each unit representing a brigade, so you've got something like that. You've got your single bases for when you start taking casualties. And there we go. The beauty of this game is it's meant to be really quick to play. I've not yet had a chance to play it, even though I do have armies for various different types of this. Dan Mersey's done a lot of these sorts of rules. But yeah, so a unit for that might be, you use 24 points for a quick game, meant to be less than an hour. You're looking at sort of an elite Confederate force might be 3 units, 4 points each, whereas a Union force might be 4 units. So what you could do is double that up, and you start to get a decent amount of units on the table. And like say, just use some head cannon changing so that instead of being a squad of 12 men, which it kind of represents in the rules, you suddenly got 12 bases that might represent a brigade or a regiment. And yeah, I think that would be a fairly cool way to play some American Civil War. But yeah, like I say, for those, my key learning point, my key thing I've done is for those games that need single bases, I've been quite easy to make some single bases. If you want to keep with Warlord models, I sliced up a unit, a strip of 10, and mounted them on the base. I have added a Kallistra officer there. So you could do this with the Warlord models as well and stay true to the range. So there you go. There's my thoughts on some of the War Games rules. What I like about different War Games rules is each one's going to give you something different. Each one's going to have its own strengths and its own weaknesses. And hopefully I've shown off some of the things I really like about the different rules as we've come up. Fire and Fury, actually, didn't mention. Fire and Fury, you do need a lot of bases for Fire and Fury. So Fire and Fury, you are talking about big regiments and big battles on the table. My ideal set of rules might be something like Peter Pig's scenario generation. From what I can tell, Picketts Charge, command and control somehow. I really like the principles of war, hidden movement, and the fact we're using 3 bases for principles of war. And some of the simplicity that the movement in Black Powder gives. Maybe I should jam all this stuff together and see what happens. But anyway, I've talked enough. This will be quite a fun video. The next one I'm going to make should be out quite soon as well. So yeah, if you've got a favourite set of American Civil War rules, tell me what they are and tell me why I should check them out. I'm always interested in picking up new sets of rules. But anyway, you have a great time and I'll catch you later. Goodbye.